Yeah. What's your biggest concern with the upcoming provincial budget?
My biggest fear is the cuts to public services across the board.
Awesome. Thank you. What's your biggest concern about the upcoming provincial
My
budget?
biggest fear is more cuts to the healthcare and mental health and the safe injection sites.
Awesome. Thank you. What's your biggest concern about the upcoming provincial budget?
What I would not like to see, and I fear might happen, is that it will bring the standard of our health and educational and social services in general lower than they have ever been before.
Wonderful. Well, wonderful answer. Not a
Affordable housing.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Okay.
I wasn't recording it.
Just one of my main concerns of what's in this provincial budget is affordable housing. There.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do either one of you want to address it?
Sure.
Okay.
So my concern is that there's not going to be enough money to have appropriate staffing levels in long-term care and home care, and good wages for those workers.
Awesome. Well, what's your biggest concern in the upcoming provincial budget?
Well, for me, as a student, privatization of healthcare and education for me is my biggest concern.
Awesome. Okay. Do either one of you want to answer?
Sure.
Okay. What's your biggest concern in the upcoming provincial budget?
My biggest concern is how much is education of our children going to get cut. That's going to affect them today, and how many new jails, new and bigger jails they want to build, how many new cages they're going to build for the kids that are going through school now in less equipped, less resources schools, where they're going to end up incarcerated tomorrow. So I can give you a quicker soundbite if you want.
I'm recording now, so what's your biggest concern about the upcoming provincial budget?
Because it's not directly related to the needs of families, period.
Awesome. What is your biggest concern about the upcoming provincial budget?
One of my biggest concerns is that we're going to have vulnerable people in our community left behind, and that comes in a number of ways, whether that's through healthcare, through education, young people, post-secondary education. The biggest thing is that the most vulnerable people are going to be left behind. There's not going to be funding there for them all, and we really need to take care of those people in our communities who need the most assistance.
Awesome. How do you think the Ford government could afford to help those people?
Well, I feel that this government is sort of under a ruse, inflating what our deficit is now. I understand that there is a deficit, but it's highly inflated. So having cutbacks is not the answer, it's not the solution. We need to make sure people can afford to live. This is about decent work. If people cannot afford to pay for the necessities, things like housing, things like food, education, then really we're not investing in our future. So we can afford it now. Cutbacks is not the way to move forward.
Awesome. Cool. And I'm recording. So what's your biggest concern in the upcoming provincial budget?
My biggest concern with the upcoming budget is cuts to social services and social supports. Just like the $15 minimum wage is connected to people's health, we also see that the poverty levels that people with disabilities or those who are unable to work face really affects their physical health and their mental health, and that's just on an interpersonal level, that's just atrocious. And then secondary to that is that it is a burden on our healthcare system when we don't take care of the most vulnerable members of our society.
Awesome. What's your biggest concern with the upcoming provincial budget?
My biggest concern is that there's going to be more cuts to public services. And on a personal level, I'm expecting a child in August. And I'm very worried that my kid's life is going to be completely different than a previous generation. because of all of these cuts to education, to healthcare, and limiting universality and making it a means-tested services. I think that's going to make it really, really hard for thousands of people, and I'm very concerned about that. And more people are going to be left behind. So I think that budget is actually going to make it worse for Ontarians, not better. And so I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that whatever happens is stopped, but at least to let the public know that we don't trust this government. And so all they are going to do is try to balance the budget off of people's backs and our communities. And so I'm very concerned about that.
Awesome. Well, we're recording, and
so my biggest concern with the upcoming provincial budget is the joint cuts to healthcare, to education and the post-secondary sector, rolled in with other cuts to basic social services. That the combination of all of those things is going to hit all of the folks in this province who rely on those services in order to survive and to get by, and really weakening the social safety net for everyone who is being the most affected by the attacks by this government.
wonderful. Anything else?
No.
No?